Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Sirhan on X, live from Cincinnati, Ohio, here in the United States. Excuse me, a recovering version of Sirhan today because I was just diagnosed with a strep throat recently, but I'm starting to get my voice back. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 10th of February 2025 and a terrific 3-day weekend. Happy Super Bowl victory to all my followers who are Eagles fans, especially those in Philadelphia. I know you guys are a little sick in the head with how you guys celebrated last night, but still, it was your night. Congratulations. So I'm going to touch right down to it here real quick. Of course, last night was a Super Bowl. Nobody saw this coming, yours truly being one of them. But maybe in hindsight, maybe we should have, because simply because this is what Philly, especially on the defensive side of the ball, was starting to build toward when you consider all the drafts they had over the past 2 to 3 years. We think about guys like Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat, Zach Bond, Cooper DeJean, and Quinion Mitchell, putting that defense together. And you have a defensive mastermind like Vic Fangio, just basically just calling the defensive schemes to mere perfection basically the entire game, especially when it mattered most the first 3.5 quarters. Maybe we should have seen this coming. Maybe not in a lopsided fashion it was, but maybe we should have seen it like this because this is what the Eagles built themselves for. Of course, the acquisition of Saquon Barkley to the running game, and of course, Hurts through the 2 touchdown passes to his top receivers, Brown and Smith. Jalen Hurts, the Super Bowl MVP, where I thought Josh Sweat should have gotten it because of how Sweat just abused Joe Toney last night on that left guard position. Maybe we should have. Maybe we should be surprised, but at the same time, maybe we shouldn't, because Phillies GM Howard Roseman put together a spectacular roster, built it nicely. Excuse me. Pay their players adequately, built a nice talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to where they could have this moment in the Super Bowl. Of course, remember 2 years ago when they lost to Kansas City, one of the problems was they weren't able to generate any kind of pressure on Patrick Mahomes. In this game here, they didn't even blitz. They just stuck to a basic 4-man rush and just made life terrible for Patrick Mahomes, sacking him 6 times, forcing 3 turnovers. Of course, the pick 6 by DeJean. And that was basically all she wrote. But kudos to the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe we should have seen this one coming, simply because this is what they built for. I mean, I get everybody, including myself, and I'm guilty of this, was just so enamored of the success of what the Kansas City Chiefs had done the last 6 years. And you would think, it's the old adage, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Kansas City was the man going into this game. Philadelphia beat the man and did it the right way. And you have to tip your hat off to the Eagles. Kudos, congratulations. This is the Eagles moment. Enjoy your time. For Kansas City, they're going to be back here again. We all know this. Everyone's already just doing victory laps in Cincinnati and Buffalo when neither Cincinnati or Buffalo has a leg to stand on. But get to the Super Bowl first and actually win it before you dance on anyone, because you guys in Cincinnati and Buffalo don't have a leg to stand on right now. Plain and simple. Kansas is going to be back. They still have Patrick Mahomes. They're probably going to retool in key areas, especially on the offensive line front, especially to consider their tackle positions, where it's now a dire need, but I'm sure the standout GM Brett Veach is going to address it. And they will be fine. They're going to be there at the end of the day. They're still a top this team to be in the AFC at the very least. And you're going to have to really find a way to knock them off, which is something nobody has done aside of Tampa Bay and Philadelphia in the Super Bowl. So good luck down the line. Kansas is going to be fine. They will be back. And the scary part for Philadelphia is the key nucleus of this defense is still young. And now they were talking about adding Myles Garrett to this bunch. As good as his defense was last season, actually, I got a comment. I'm going to do in a minute. When you think about this defense of Philadelphia, the key pieces are young. You have the defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio. And if they do add Myles Garrett, like the rumor mill says he will, although it's up for debate, it's pretty scary what this defense is going to do. This defense basically turned it up as the season went on and as the playoffs went on, and basically just put the clamps on Patrick Mahomes and basically just won the game at the end of the day. Kudos to the Philadelphia Eagles. They won it the right way. It was well-deserved and well-earned. Enjoy it. Jalen Hurts has a Super Bowl MVP. We know the story on him, had to overcome a lot. Transferred colleges from Alabama to Oklahoma to get a high draft position in the 2020 draft. Eagles got their man. 2 Super Bowl appearances, and now a Super Bowl ring and a Super Bowl trophy. What can you say about the guy? Can't take it away from him. He earned it, and he deserved it. Look at this real quick. I went. Who's there's a boy that Philly did this one. Same here, because I thought going in, I thought I'm an old school guy. You're the man until you're beat. Kansas was the man. Philly had to beat the man to win the title. They did it, and they did it the right way. I'm with you on this one. Good point. So I just want to touch that up real quick. And of course, the free agency is going to be coming up. Lots of trade speculation, free agency speculation. Exactly a month away for the new league New Year starts. So this is going to be crazy. There's, of course, a lot of rumors floating around already this off season. So it's going to be probably the wildest off season in a trade front as opposed to the free agency front, because marquee names are going to want to be traded. And it's going to depend on what teams are willing to give up and willing to sacrifice to get what they want and what they need. I'll divulge into more of that later on. Now to speaking of endings in the NBA, maybe one of the premier basketball minds at all levels. We talk about coaching and even broadcasting. Hung it up for the last time yesterday, and we're talking about the great Hubie Brown. I remember when the NBA on TNT was the big thing on cable television, and everybody wanted to watch the NBA on TNT. I always asked myself, is Hubie Brown going to be commentating this game? Because I always loved Hubie Brown. I always called him the John Madden of NBA broadcasting, because like Madden, he would use the telestrator, the X's and O's like Madden does with the NFL. He simplifies the game, makes things easy for the casual fan to understand the game of basketball. And of course, remember, the guy was a 2-time coach of the year when he coached in New York and Memphis. Just one of the brilliant basketball minds, maybe in NBA history, and he hung it up for the last time today. Just think about this. The guy was still calling games at an elite level at age 91. If I could be a broadcaster at age 91, I'm doing something right. For you to do something like this at age 91 speaks to the brilliance and the legacy and how everyone just adored, loved, and most importantly, respected the great Hubie Brown. I mean, seeing at the end of the game, players from both the Bucks and the 76ers and even the NBA referees gathering together to give Hubie Brown a final game ball, shaking his hand, thanking him for the memories. Shows the kind of a personality and person Hubie Brown was in the basketball community, especially in the broadcasting field. If you ever was watching the NBA on TNT back in the early to mid 90s, when it really started to take off, it was the premier basketball network outside of the NBA on NBC. You wanted to see the game that Hubie Brown was going to do analysis for, because the guy was a spectacular. I mean, he basically just kept it simple, wasn't sophisticated, broke things down in a way to make even the casual fans understand the game, simple X's and O's, the most important stuff. And even sometimes he knew how to, sometimes he was even a fan too. You hear him say, oh my, it's some of a certain place. But Hubie Brown was certainly a phenom for a long, long, long time. I mean, not just with the coaching, of course, the broadcasting, many aspects, his contributions to the game of basketball, especially at the NBA level, were second to none. And as a fan of yours for a long time, Hubie Brown, I'm going to give you my own personal salute, because you make basketball commentary fun to listen to, because everybody yaps about basketball and sports commentary these days. Hubie Brown was one of those ones when you turn on the TV, you wanted to listen to, because he knew how to break down the game, he knew how to simplify things, and he knew how to get you to understand and explain the game and explain it in a ways to where you could understand it as even a casual fan who's never played a basketball game in his life at any level. That's Hubie Brown's legacy. I mean, Hubie Brown was just a spectacular persona in the NBA community. He certainly will be missed. I mean, for him to do it at age 91 it's just mind-blowing, especially still at this level. Spoke volumes to just how great Hubie Brown generally was. So I just want to give my shout out to that. Of course, another one I want to talk about is the return of another basketball personality last night. It was in Clemson, where the standout ESPN analyst Dick Vitale came back. You guys know his stories, battles with cancer, being someone who's had his own cancer screening myself and has, cancer in the family myself. I can relate to this. And this is to see the standing ovation Dick Vitale got at Clemson last night when his name was introduced to the crowd was volumes. Dick Vitale, just like Hubie Brown, loves his game with a passion and basically did it all along and just absolutely adores it. How could you not like Dick Vitale? The dude is just sensational. I know at times he can be annoying, but the guy loves college basketball with a pure passion like none other. That was who Dick Vitale was. And to see him back on the college sidelines with a headset yesterday was just a beautiful thing, especially when you consider the in and outs he had with cancer, all of his cancer treatments, which he chronicled on the X platform. That was Dick Vitale. Excuse me. So glad to see Dick Vitale back calling games. Shout out to Hubie Brown for a phenomenal, phenomenal career. I mean, two of the brilliant minds in all levels of basketball. Just much love and respect to both. Now we're going to touch on to some historical moments in boxing history because I see some of you fight followers over here. This is for all you guys and all over the place. The first one I'm going to talk about is for you guys all over the place who play the refs is rigged card because I got something for you. This took place 33 years ago today at the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City on free TV between James Toney and Toney-Tiberi. This fight was supposed to be a perceived walk in the park for James Toney because nobody knew who Toney-Tiberi was. But everybody knows James Toney. James Toney ducks no one. He fights anyone. Basically, he's the next man up fighter, and that's who he was. Takes on an unheralded Toney-Tiberi, was a 10-1 favorite, but of course, coming in the typical James Toney fashion, had a weight cut to make the 160-pound limit, and it showed in his performance, where basically Toney-Tiberi, you could say, outworked him throughout most of the 12 rounds, and Toney-Tiberi should have been given the decision, where at the end of the day, it was Toney who was given the decision on a split nod. But here's where the fun becomes. An investigation was launched after this fight, where it was two judges, the two that gave it to James Toney, weren't licensed in the state of New Jersey, and a third judge who was licensed in the state of New Jersey scored a fight to Toney-Tiberi. I mean, it's just like, a standard protocol. You have to go through the protocols, the procedures to get licensed to judge in a fight in particular states. It's common not just in the states, but all over the world. But later when this was revealed, I mean, basically, I don't want to say it broke Toney-Tiberi, but he never fought again after this. And there was outcries for years for Toney-Tiberi to go ahead and protest this fight. But all credit to Toney-Tiberi. He took the high road and basically just said, I'm done with the sport. I'm gone. I'm not going to contest or anything, which I can't blame him. When you're perception-wise screwed over like that, the way he was, it's going to drive you out. And that's what happened. Because anybody saw the fight knows Toney-Tiberi, at least in my opinion, outworked James Toney that night. I mean, James Toney was non-existent. Actually, there was a time in the third round where James Toney was hanging on the ropes to try and save himself, where he looked real, real weak, and Toney-Tiberi was just coming on and working Toney's body. But from the James Toney angle, maybe we should have seen this all along because it reared its ugly head nearly 2.5 years later when he fought Roy Jones, because you know the story there. He had a weight cut just to make the weight, and he gets schooled by Jones. Again, not a slight on James Toney, because I said all along, James Toney was one of those throwback fighters. He didn't care who you were. He didn't care what you were. He basically said, next man up, he'll fight you. That's who James Toney was. And James Toney had surreal boxing talent. And I mean surreal talent for that day. I mean, talk about the old school shoulder roll, was one of the naturals at it. And he talks about guys like Ezra Charles and George Benton when it comes to this. Just a natural talent, but started to lack the work ethic to get to that point simply because of all the weight cutting he had to do. I mean, the dude was just insanely talented. We talk about what he did to Michael Nunn in May of '91 in Nunn's backyard of Davenport, Iowa. James Toney was just a sensational talent who just lacked the work ethic to get to what he needs to get to that next level. I mean, he called for unification fights against guys like Julian Jackson, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank. Of course, they all ducked him. But the talent that James Toney had, just case of pure talent, maybe of all time, he's got to be in the top 20 because he was it. But we talk about having a weight cut the way he did to make way for fights like he did at 60, 68, and even at times at 75. Because going into his fight with Ernest Mateen on the De La Hoya Hernandez undercard, he had a weight cut there. Luckily, Ernest Mateen just fought a dirty fight and just wanted to check out and get disqualified, which what happened. But it's just maybe we should have seen the signs here. This is what James Toney was at the end of the day. Now, of course, a year later, he comes back and puts a performance of perfection against Iran Barkley, which just shows us how talented he was when he wanted to put his mind to it. James Toney was insanely talented, had very, very old school tactics, old school knowledge, and he implemented it in the ring. His problem was when it came down to it at the most, he didn't want to put it all together and basically go himself to the next level. Because I thought this guy could have put himself among the real all-time great middleweights. We talk about Ray Robinson, Jake LaMotta, Harry Greb, Marvin Hagler, and even a guy like Bernard Hopkins. However, we said Bernard Hopkins had an insane work ethic like none other. You give him, James Toney, you put that work ethic of his in James Toney, you would have had something special. Bernard Hopkins always had a chip on his shoulder. So too did James Toney. But James Toney was more reliant on talent as opposed to Bernard Hopkins, who was reliant on work ethic. That's why he was grinding the old school way to get to the top that he did. That's probably the biggest difference there. If Toney had the work ethic Hopkins had, we're not having this conversation. James Toney was surreally talented, but just whatever reason couldn't keep it consistent enough. But it was 33 years ago today that James Toney got the gift decision over Dave Tiberi. The commission revealed two of the judges who scored the fight for Toney shouldn't have even been judges because they weren't licensed in the state of New Jersey. And of course, after the fight, the standout commentator Alex Walu, who basically called the decision disgusting to James Toney's face, and basically the whole hoopla was there. Dave Tiberi basically never fought again, understandably so. Now there's one wild moment. And now there's another wild moment that took place. And this one was wild in a different sense. And I'm still trying to ask myself what the deal is this day. This was the second fight between Lennox Lewis and Oliver McCall that took place for a belt. Not belt. Belt. For you idiots in the boxing community who value belts. It's belt. Get it 3 thick heads. This is a rematch of the upset that took place in London where Lewis made a mistake. 1-2 by McCall, floors him. Of course, McCall's life after that just went in spirals. Lewis tried all he can to get that title back. Basically, both guys had wild circumstances in and out of the ring, and basically came to a head on this day at the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas for a belt. This was McCall lost the belt to Bruno. Bruno lost that to Tyson. Tyson, we know, ducked Lennox Lewis twice. One time because Don King paid him $4 million. The second time this belt was vacated, so Tyson could pursue the Holyfield fight. We know what happened there. So this belt Tyson vacated was on the line when Lewis and McCall fought the second time. Nobody knew what to expect because for Lewis, after he had lost to McCall, he was still trying to gain respect in the boxing community, especially in the heavyweight division. We know the heavyweight division was the glamour division of all of boxing. For McCall, just wanted to show the first fight was no fluke. And of course, his life in and out of the ring was all over the place, and out of drug rehabs and jail for a whole bunch of litany of things. And of course, a downward spiral for him took place on this night, where from the second round on, the guy just basically doesn't want to fight. The guy is just running around in circles, and Lennox Lewis is looking confused, wondering what to do with the guy. He's running around. He's crying. He's in the corner with his trainer, George Benton. Everybody's asking him what's going on. He doesn't want to say anything. And basically he's running around, crying, hands down, not even throwing punches, doing nothing. And Lennox Lewis is just sitting here, wondering what to do with this guy. I mean, it was one of the most bizarre nights maybe ever. We consider McCall's actions in the second fight. Especially we consider how he just landed the perfect left-right combination to floor Lewis the first time. And basically to resort to this in the rematch raised more questions than answers. Because he did this from the second round till the time the fight was stopped in the 5th round, and Lewis was rewarded the victory and the belt. But it's a symbolic of what Lennox Lewis had to deal with what Oliver McCall became after beating Lewis after their first fight in 1994. Because Lennox Lewis was fighting hard, and I mean hard for respect, that nobody wanted to give him the boxing intelligentsia, because we consider Riddick Bowe ducked him. You consider Mike Tyson ducked him twice. And he basically had to learn to get things the hard way, which was fine with him because he said he'd rather get it the hard way. And basically, he fights an Oliver McCall who checks out after round 2, runs around crying, and basically nobody knows what's going on, even Lennox Lewis. And watching Oliver McCall just break down the way he did confused everyone in the boxing world that night. It was one of the most wild things you could probably have to ask for. When a fighter is crying in the middle of the ring, the way Lewis did, the way Oliver McCall did that night, it makes you wonder. I know he had demons outside the ring with his, being in and out of jails and drug rehabs. I get it. Nobody knew at the time whether that carried over into the ring, but it still doesn't excuse what he did, because I thought he had a shot to beat Lennox Lewis, because you remember, in the first fight, Lennox Lewis was planted on the chin and on the canvas, and there are people who thought McCall might have a puncher's chance in this. And I actually liked Oliver McCall coming up as a heavyweight, because I thought he was a sturdy fighter, not great in every area, but good in many areas, and did manage to win a belt. Of course, lost it to Frank Bruno. But for him to resort to this in the rematch of a guy he basically knocked out 3 years before in the guy's home country, raised more questions than answers. Something I can't wrap my head around, and it's something a lot of people in the boxing community can't wrap their heads around, because this is symbolic of what Oliver McCall was after beating Lennox Lewis, and it was a symbolic of the respect Lennox Lewis had to fight hard for, and I mean hard for, to get to the top level in the heavyweight division. I mean, as I said, Riddick Bowe ducked him. Mike Tyson ducked him twice in 96. He got wins over Mercer and Morrison. He got this one. Of course, capped it off with the 2 wins over Vander Holyfield. Finally got to that point when he beat Holyfield at the end of 1999 to win the undisputed heavyweight championship. But for Lennox Lewis, people in America still didn't buy his act, and this didn't help his performance. This did not help him at all, and I say this for this reason, because everyone got so fixated on heavyweight knockouts for the longest time. Lennox Lewis was a pugilist and a student of the game that turned the boxing community off at that time. Because Lennox Lewis was a safety-first fighter with that patent at 6'5" height and that 84-inch reach, where he just used the long 1-2s to keep you on the outside. And nobody liked it. And nobody respected it, especially here in America. Lennox Lewis had to fight hard for it. And he fought, and he fought, and he fought, and he finally got it, his just due, in 1999 in the 2 wins against Evander Holyfield. That was what Lennox Lewis was at the end of the day. And for Oliver McCall, he never got to this level ever again. Just basically in and out of drugs rehabs. Apparently, he fought as recently as about a month ago at age 54. I mean, I loved Ollie, but come on, why how you fighting at age 54? Yeah, what a weird night that was in the Las Vegas Hilton in Las Vegas. Real weird. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to talk about one thing, because it was around a year ago this time, because I don't share this much. This is why I started my vision of wanting to do this. The live streaming, the podcasting, whatever the hell you want to call it. I watch a boatload of you guys, and a lot of you guys are just nothing sort of phenomenal. I mean, I can go on and on and on. Actually, this guy here is one of my favorites. You're one of them. Of course, my guy, Midwest Farzin Vasugian, my fellows over at Boxing Media Hub, among many others. And I thought I would take a crack at this. I mean, I'm not craving for views. I'm not craving for clickbait. I don't crave for anything like that. I'm not one to have a 7 million person following outside my home when I do this. I just do this because I love it. I mean, it's just better to do it like this than have one of those, 16,000 word posts like this that nobody's going to read, or wild stuff that's going to get people up in a rage in the internet social media society that we're in now, where some people get triggered over certain words. And I said this when I started this. What you get out of me is 100% genuine authenticity, and 100% factuality because I don't back down from the truth. No, I'm not going to sucker myself down to anybody's level so you can hear what you want to hear. I've said this all along. This is who I am at the end of the day. I love doing this. It's fun. I do everything for the right reasons. That's how I was taught. That's how I was raised. That's how I was trained. That's how I was developed. I had to learn this the hard way myself because, it was a time I was doing this podcast, doing this. I had no views, but I didn't care. I didn't care. You know why? I use it as a platform to get better. I use it as a platform to keep trucking. I use it as a platform to keep going. The views are going to come. The views are going to come. I'm not going to brag about it because that's not who I am. You guys are on the viewership. You do the bragging for me because I don't brag. I don't boat. I don't self-sell. I don't over glamorize. I don't do any of that. That's not who I am. Because when I started this vision, I said all along it's going to be gradual. I wasn't going to throw myself in the line of fire just like that because I know I just started into this. But I said this is going to take some time. Here I am about a little less than a year into the vision. And now I've gotten places where I never thought I'd go. Again, I'm not going to brag about it. I use the platforms to speak it, but I'll leave it to you guys to have fun with it. I mean, I said all along, you can agree, you can disagree. That's fine with me. I mean, we can disagree and be adults, right? That's the problem I've had for the longest time when I was in this a few years back. Excuse me. Because there were people engaged in clickbait, engaged in all that fun stuff, especially got cowards like Dan Raphael and the Bengals captain and Zim, just to name a few of them. But if I said this all along, if you're in this for clickbait, you're in this for the wrong reasons. I try to do everything for the right reasons, and this is the vision I had. I still intend to grow it. I tend to make it bigger. I tend to make it even better than ever. It's up to, again, I'm not going to be the one to brag about it because I let my product and my talking do the talking, because I'm not one to tell you, I'm the greatest thing live streaming has ever existed, because that's a 100% lie coming out of my mouth. But I'm going to continue to work. I'm going to continue to grow. I'm going to continue to develop. I'm going to aim to be better. I mean, I don't think of it as, peaking or hitting the mountaintop, because you can't do that in this sort of thing. Even subtle things, I just got to find ways to be better. I've said it all along. I've always said it all along. I take criticism well. I take appraisals well. I mean, I look at as what I would call feedback for ways to get better, and that's how I've always been. And I'll continue this vision as I continue to go along in this live streaming field. And I want to say to all my followers out here, especially the ones I know personally who follow me on other platforms, thank you. That's what I'm going to say. So I can't talk straight. I'm still recovering from the strep throat. I do apologize for my voice today. It wasn't the greatest. And that will wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 10th of February 2025. Tomorrow will be one topic and one topic only. The greatest upset, and at least in boxing history, possibly in sports history. I go in details on it. What I knew then, what I knew now, stock it up amongst the greatest upsets ever. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, and everybody's just sit back and enjoy it. Probably one of those fun episodes I've ever had. And it's always, and I tell this to everyone all the time, make self-care your number one priority. Take care of yourself first before you take care of anyone else. Because if you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else in life matters. Until then, good night, take care of yourselves, and God bless.